Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and staff and councillors, to tonight's Agenda Forum, Wednesday the 6th of November 2024. Declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Just would like to share our acknowledgement of country. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to elders past and present and their descendants. I'd also just like to read the disclaimer. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted at the entry of the public gallery, and members of the public are advised to read them prior to attending the meeting, and please abide by them. Tonight's attendance and apologies. The councillors that are present tonight, and we have an apology from Councillor Dave Knight, Councillor McCulloch, and we have leave of absence for Councillor Oringo and Councillor Bowman. I've no notice from Councillor Catalano, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor... who are we missing there? It's just those two. So they may arrive during the meeting. We have declarations of financial and proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. If councillors have any of those, could they please fill out the form and hand them up to Acting CEO Mr Coaten? And we have the one declaration of financial and proximity interest from Mr Coaten, who is the Executive Director of Operations, and the declaration was an impartiality interest in item 14.3.3. Question, Councillor Johnson?
Have we got an apology from the CEO?
Pardon?
Do we have an apology from the CEO?
Yes, CEO is an apology, but it's not included on here in one sheet. Though.
No, the apologies are normally just for the council.
Yeah, it's just for the councillors, thank you. And so that declaration of impartiality was from Mr Coaten, as we said, the Executive Director of Operations, declared an impartiality interest in item 14.3.3, which was Roe Estate Structure Plan, Lot 24, number 463 Beachborough Road North, and Lot 385, number 18 Black Boy Way, Beachborough, Swan SP 2024/3, as a close family member as an employee of the owner. Then move on to part 5, which is petitions. We have Ms Smith relating to the DA 679-2024 Form 1, Regulation 6, 7 and 19, childcare premises at 7 Fauntleroy Street, Guildford, WA, and the removal of trees. Good evening. Just pop the button on for your microphone, thanks. Now, if you would just like to read out your petition there. Thank you.
Petition from the residents of Guildford. Loss of 6 mature native trees and increased traffic. Reject plan for childcare premises at 7 Fauntleroy Street in Guildford and return to currently approved plan for 2 single houses, retaining trees and not increasing traffic in an area already subject to heavy congestion. The application for a childcare facility at 7 Fauntleroy Street in Guildford should be rejected for the same reason it was in 2021. The parking shortfall will lead to increased congestion on Fauntleroy Street at peak drop-off times, impairing the function of the road and causing potential inconvenience to residents. The road is not wide enough to allow for the flow of two-way traffic if cars are queued or parked in the street. The area is already under intense pressure due to the increased commuter parking around the East Guildford train station and the expanded St Jude's aged care. The narrow intersection of Fauntleroy Street and James Street will be unacceptably impacted. The plan will also lead to the loss of 6 mature flooded gum trees, part of the Guildford streetscape and habitat for local birds. This is against the Guildford Heritage Area Local Planning, Policy 8.5.1 and 8.5.2, stating mature trees are to be retained and integrated into the design of the new development. Plans for the 2 single dwellings, which will retain the trees, have already been submitted to Council and approved at the 14th December 2022 meeting. We call for the return to those plans, which will allow development of the site without the loss of valuable tree canopy and increased traffic congestion. And here is a copy of our petition. And if I would like to have my 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much for handing that up. Okay.
As per previous rejected submission, there are parking bay shortfalls as per COS minimum requirements. The plans show no access for the rear tandem parking bays. The traffic monitoring report for Fauntleroy Street is from 2017, long before the significant expansion of St Jude's and the massive influx of train commuters utilising Fauntleroy Street and Swan Street East for parking. Fauntleroy Street is not wide enough to allow the flow of two-way traffic, especially at the junction of Fauntleroy, James Street, if cars are parking, queuing on the street, which they already do. It is 5.5 metres wide, not 5.6 metres wide, as stated in submission. The flooded gum trees are mature and healthy, as verified in the arborist reports. Very low flying large passenger jets flying directly above this site. Noise greatly exceeds the NF maximum allowed for schools, universities, categories that this proposal falls under, and cannot be mitigated when infants are playing outside, affecting their learning and sleep, indoors or out. The misinformation and lack of up-to-date data raises serious concerns on the integrity of the overseas developer's proposal. There are a large number of daycares in close proximity to Guildford Grammar, 500 metres away, at least 2 already in South Guildford, with planning approval for another in the Waterhall IGA car park granted, and the large one in the Bunnings complex in Midland. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that and for that petition, and that petition will be tabled next week at the Ordinary Council meeting. Okay. So we move on to reports and notices of motion. And 6.1, additional information from officers, there was nil. And 6.2, we move to deputations. In accordance with the current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations were required by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 5th of November 2024. And all written deputations were received by 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 5th of November 2024, and they were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening. So we move to item 14.2.3, which is the Movida Estate acoustic wall, which is on page 97. And we have 3 in-person deputations tonight, and the speakers will have 3 minutes each. And also there'll be 1 minute for a response from each of the people speaking if a councillor asks a question. So our first in-person deputation is Susan Bluck, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Susan.
I have been living in Blackadder Road, Swanview from 2013 to present, directly opposite the freight train line and currently in a section without the wall opposite, with open land facing my property. Initially, for the first 7 years or so, the trains and subsequent noise from the trains and the line was not a problem at all. We thoroughly enjoyed the suburb and the environment, including the trains. Since the Movida Estate development and noise wall construction, the noise level from the trains has increased significantly, to the degree that you cannot hear conversation or television in the house when a large train is passing. When an obviously heavily loaded train passes, the ground can often vibrate around and under the house. You can physically feel and hear the passing train at a concerning level. Some windows vibrate. Since the wall has been constructed, the noise emanating from the reflection of sound off the hard, untreated concrete surface travels and bounces up to our vicinity. This noise is without doubt significantly louder and invasive since the wall has been constructed. The sound is travelling from the source, reflecting up and down the train line. Whilst I understand the necessity for some sort of barrier like a wall, given safety and risk factors, etc., it is extremely concerning that it appears that no consideration has been given to the current residents who were already residing in the area east of the track. The noise level now emanating is becoming a health and well-being concern, as it is disruptive and invasive and potentially damaging our properties. Surely some more consideration and study can be implemented to pursue a treatment for the wall that is sound absorbent, not reflective, and conducive to less noise being produced, as well as being aesthetically better. As a ratepayer, I feel more study and collaboration with affected residents is certainly warranted for this matter. The grey, ugly, cheap-looking wall construction that has been built is an insult and ineffective, given the alternatives available in 2024, even comparatively to similar sound walls already in place in various locations of Perth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask if you can just stay there for questions from councillors. Councillor Howlett.
Thank you for that, Susan. You said that when a large train passes by, you find it hard to listen to the television, have a conversation in your house. Could you give me an idea of the sort of length of time a large train passing would occupy?
I think the length of the train varies. The louder ones seem to be at night. I'm guessing, I haven't timed it to be honest myself, but 10 seconds, 15, 20 seconds. Yeah, well, yeah,
Councillor Henderson.
at a
Oh, sorry.
time. Sorry?
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Just wanted to get a feeling for the size of the trains. So we're seeing multiple locomotives and longer trains these days. Has that been a contributing factor?
I would say so. It seemed that larger engines have been used and definitely longer, heavier trains. I mean, the trains obviously in itself are not an issue in respect that were brought there in the first place, aware of the fact that there was a train line. Yeah.
Councillors, are there any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and I'd just like to understand your proximity to the rail line. Do you live on Blackadder or one of
I
the...
do.
You do? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Like immediately opposite. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions for Ms Black? No? Thank you very much for your deputation. And we move on to deputation number 2, which is Mary O'Neill, not in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mary, and you have 3 minutes. You might need to bend that down a bit closer to you.
Yeah, thank you. That's some information that I've
Okay.
been collecting.
Do you want us to hand that out now?
I've only got 2, so yeah,
Oh, okay,
feel
we can
free.
move that around and make
right.
some copies.
Good evening, councillors and administrative staff. My name is Mary O'Neill, a member of the Noise Wall Action Group. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today to express my personal experiences since the noise wall was erected. We built our home in Wilgie Gardens, Swanview, acknowledging we were in 50 metres of a freight line. We spent our times in the evenings with doors and windows open overnight to cool the house with little disturbance. Fast forward 28 years and the situation has drastically changed. The noise abatement wall now stands on the western side of the freight line. We don't open doors and windows. We have hot roller shutters and heavy curtains. I use earplugs and still have sleep disturbances. We hear the entire length of many trains from approach to departure, making conversations and TV viewing difficult during this time. Many items in the house are frequently rattling, and we feel vibrations when we're sitting in lounge chairs or in bed. Cornices have developed cracks over the last few years. In a recent experience, I was startled awake as a result of a train at night creating such extreme noise and vibrations, it replicated a high-action scene in a surround sound cinema. These observations are shared by our neighbours when canvassing for signatures around Wilgie Gardens and Blackadder Road. Shelves shaking, objects falling, cracking in rooms, and residents desperate for relief. Since November 22, I have noise and sleep data using a smartphone. I've provided screenshots to show noise spikes correlating with sleep disturbances across a sample of 7 days. I do have samples for the whole 3 years. Looking at this sample, I believe this is adversely impacting my health as a result of frequent sleepless nights. My experiences are supported by the 2018 Commonwealth Department of Health report, recognising that environmental noise is an emerging health risk impacting sleep, mental health and well-being. Recent statements from the Minister of Transport stated increases in freight line capacity with longer, heavier and more frequent trains. I urge the Council to support a detailed assessment of noise levels, especially with consistent sampling across a wider area and time frame using reliable monitoring equipment beyond my personal smart device. Recognise the impact of noise as a growing environmental health risk and consider practical solutions to help us return to a healthier living environment. investigate possible eastern states solutions which have been implemented in similar neighbourhoods to ours. Thank you for your consideration and commitment to supporting residents on both sides of the Freight Line.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that deputation. I'll just ask councillors, are there any questions for Ms O'Neill? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you for your deputation. The Freight Line, I believe, has been leased by the state government on a long-term lease. Have you discussed these issues with your local Member of Parliament?
I'm considering that. I have not done so as yet, but that's the next step.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Howlett.
Thank you very much for your deputation. That was good, interesting to hear. You're a long-term resident, so you've got lots of experience of living next to the rail line. My question relates to if next week the officer's recommendation does get through or does get up and is accepted by council. I'm just and given that it's noted in the report that there's an indication that the vegetation would be of no benefit, do you consider that the planting of trees along Blackadder Road would be a suitable use of ratepayers' funds?
Potentially no, it doesn't serve immediate relief to the ratepayers. It takes too long to grow. You know, there are other solutions available, and I've got data that from other environmental protection people in Victoria, New South Wales, who've done things to the line itself. Potentially that's not an issue, but surely the council can help us approach these people and say, listen, what can we do?
Through you, Madam Mayor, could I ask that data or the treatments that you have from the eastern states that Mary O'Neill has could be forwarded to the councillors for review?
Yeah,
Sure.
if that's okay. Was that included in the information that
No,
you
it
sent around?
wasn't.
Okay,
No.
problem. Questions, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to, Mary, I just want to verify your address. You say, was it Wilgie Gardens?
Wilgie, yeah. It's
Okay,
off
yeah.
Blackadder, and we are less than 50 metres from the road.
I understand where you are now. And if I'm just looking at the report now on page 160, what it shows is Movida noise wall, noise level increase between as constructed wall on west side and no wall. And it shows that the increase in noise where you live is no greater than 2 decibels, which is unnoticeable. So do you think that's a correct analysis, or do you think the report is wrong?
Well, it depends on how long they were doing the assessment for, how long the data machine was recording.
Well, it was after the wall was built, and at some point when there was a train.
Yeah,
passed.
but surely it needs a time frame. The data that I've got from my watch is when I'm wearing my watch, I've got data going up to 116 decibels.
That's true. But I think what you're saying is that the noise is obviously noticeable, but the report is saying that it's not noticeable. So would you say the report's wrong?
I'm saying that from what I've been reading, and I'm not professional by any means, but even though it may have only gone up by, they're saying a 10 decibel increase in sound, because it's not linear, it actually equates to 100, affects by 100.
Okay, understood.
Yeah. I'm glad you did, because I didn't actually understand that. But that's what it's all saying.
Councillors, are there any further questions? No, thank you very much for your deputation. And we have our third speaker, which is Angela Charlesworth, not in support of the officer's recommendation. And you have 3 minutes, with the possible length.
Could I just add something to the questions that were asked earlier?
And this is the part where we have a deputation.
Okay,
So
all right.
yeah, we'll do the deputation.
All right,
Okay.
okay. Good evening, Mayor Richardson, councillors and staff. I'm Angela Charlesworth, chairperson of the Noise Wall Action Group, a subcommittee of the Swan View Community Association, and I represent 241 electors who signed our petition. We understand and appreciate your decision is based on current information that was provided to you. I'd like to refer to public records relating to this issue. In 2015, the Herring and Storer acoustic report to the council stated, without any noise control, the noise received at the residential premises located adjacent to the railway line would exceed the required acoustic criteria. It is noted that even with the construction of a 3-metre high barrier, noise received at the adjacent residence on the western side would exceed the requirements of acoustic criteria. In 2016, the City of Swan's January Ordinary Council meeting response to the communities concerned in the schedule of submissions were informed. The applicant's acoustic consultant has confirmed that there will be no perceivable increase in noise to existing residents as a result of the wall. In the most recent reporting commissioned by Council was conclusive, and neither report could conclusively determine that the reflected noise from the wall was of a magnitude that would cause a noticeable increase in noise levels. It actually stated the magnitude of reflected noise is unknown and was only suggested as a result of computer modelling, which was inconclusive and is being used to support the advice to Council. Further advice stated the community's concerns were questionable, despite information which shows the noise problem emerged since the noise wall construction began and concerned residents' numbers are growing as the extension progresses. You're again being advised that mitigating treatments are infeasible due to cost. Yet the recommendation concerning a new study asks Council to spend twice as what it budgeted for the last unsuccessful report and undertaking in an approach that won't rely on the actual noise at issue, but use a simulated sound generator. Concrete wall barriers are acoustically highly reflective. 60% or more of the sound energy that reaches the surface like concrete bounces back off it. The train noises are complex and generating multiple frequencies. It's much harder to dampen all those frequencies without some engineering to the wall. Effectively, sound bounces back and forth, sending even more sound reaching further into the distance. Houses that find themselves outside of it altogether can experience even worse noise levels than there would have been if there was no wall at all. This council, we know, has no authority to impose restrictions or require modifications to the operations of the rail line. The council was not informed that the Freight and Logistics Council of WA has recognised the importance of industry's social licence to the successful delivery of road, rail, air and port infrastructure projects, as well as ensuring government doesn't introduce additional regulation to address community concerns over externalities like noise and pollution. Sorry. Yeah. I have a benign tremor, which is a neurological condition, and sometimes my hand takes off. Yeah. Can you
find that?
scroll up, please? Yeah, I'll bring down to there. Thank you. Sorry.
That was already. Okay, thank you.
Sorry? Oh, sorry. As a prime responsibility given to employees of the city is to improve the quality of life for our community. Does Council believe that just because of legislation doesn't provide for community protection from train noise, the city is immune from upholding its responsibilities to electors? This issue is not addressed, documented health implications. This issue, if not addressed, presents documented health implications. In 2011, World Health Organization reported environmental noise leads to heart disease, hypertension and cognitive impairment in children. The Environmental and Food and Rural Affairs UK study, Waddington, 2014, considered the impact of railway noise and vibration, exposures on annoyance, sleep disturbance, attention deficit, heart rate, cortisol levels. Annoyance was found to increase with the magnitude of the vibration. Also, the financial implications for the impacted people and their properties will be substantial. In the light of the evidence and previous councillors have been provided, we ask that you support our request presented at the October Council meeting and direct your administration to work with the Noise Wall Group to choose the next consultant and to ensure the next noise study is conducted in a manner relevant to the current environment and experiences of the affected community. I thank you for your time and on behalf of our community look forward to your support.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms Charlesworth. I'll ask councillors, are there any questions? I had Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Angela, that was a good deputation. Given that currently you've got 21 signatures that have signed the petition, I'm assuming they're all affected residents, and with the extension of another 1,000 metres in total of noise wall, both north and south, do you have an anticipation of what number of residents will be ultimately affected? Have you got any idea once that wall is complete?
Well, no, I don't have an actual figure, but taken from our survey that we did 16 months ago, plus additional survey 2 months ago, we had a response from 250 people, and that wasn't including, we have got Shire of Mundaring also has been affected, and from what's happening with the north end of the wall, that will be even more with the extension of the wall all the way down to Morrison Road. So it will affect up to Greenmount, and with the Science of Sound, Greenmount, Midvale, anything going hillwise, even Jane Brook will be affected with the wall.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. So, Angela, what you're asking for is for a, in that part of Swanview where the wall is not yet constructed, but where it is going to be constructed, you're asking for a before and after acoustic study. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Dawn, you had a further question?
Yeah, I just would like to pass around these two documents that were handed in for
That's fine,
the
just hand
previous
them
one.
around, thank you.
Okay, so
We'll also make a copy, or... Yep. We'll just have a quick look at those two copies, pass them around while
Yes,
we're having
yes,
a question. And
yes.
then we'll either
They're
make a
showing-
question and email them to each councillor as well.
Okay.
just another question, if I may. So, Angela, I think you're also saying is that the where the acoustic study shows that actually the increase in decibels is less than 2, so therefore it's not noticeable. You wouldn't agree with that statement?
No, not at all. Okay. The decibel readings, even just on Mary's charts that you see there, show you they're far in excess of 2 decibels. And the smartwatch app is actually recognised by a lot of acoustic engineers as an efficient and accurate reading of acoustic noise.
But can you tell us a bit more about this presentation that's going around? Explain what it shows.
Okay. Mary would have the watch, and well, she wears it all the time.
Well, we're in bed at night.
In bed at night. And what it does, it registers sound and when she wakes from the sound. It also registers the decibels of that sound that wakes her. And you can see the red points on the actual charts are the decibel readings at the time, and it correlates when she is woken from the noise. And those times actually correlate with trains that have passed by on the railway line.
So those sorry.
Yes.
Am I allowed to speak?
Not, well, technically,
Okay.
it's your time, so...
Yeah. She's also showing on that document the cracks that have appeared in the wall in her home in the last 2 years since the wall has been built.
Councillor Dawn, you had a question? Okay. Councillors, are there any further questions for Ms Charlesworth? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. The graphical representations and the readings, are these from your phone or are these from a professional?
No, they're actually from a smartwatch with a decibel reader app, which is recognised.
Right, okay. It's just that I'm trying to understand, because now I've done a lot of engineering and audio, that the readings don't correlate with the peaks that are shown. So perhaps we need something that can provide more technical response. But appreciate the fact that you've given us the information. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Just one further question from myself, Angela. You mentioned that there were residents of the Shire of Mundaring that are affected.
Yes.
Has the Noise Wall Action Group had discussions with the Shire of Mundaring with
Yes, we
regards
have.
to that?
Yes.
And can I ask what came of those discussions?
I met with President O'Neill and the two West Ward councillors and the CEO, and we presented a petition, and that was to be put to council in their December meeting, because there were originally 61 petitioners on there, the signatories, but after checking details on that, 42 were accepted. So we're waiting on the response from them.
Any further question?
I guess I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for the city and the Shire of Mundaring to liaise if we're both being petitioned by the same action group. It would be probably useful for us to be having discussions between the city. I guess that's a matter
That would be a
for-
question for us, but that's
Yeah.
not a question she'd be able to answer.
Oh,
so-
well, I can. The CEO was present at the meeting as well, and he was meeting with Swan CEO that Friday. We saw him on the Tuesday. And so he was meeting with the CEO and said he would discuss the issue. And that was 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question for staff then relating to that. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Councillors, are there any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Madam, I've got a suggestion. It might be a good idea to, if
Do you
we
have
could.
a question though for Ms.
Yeah, I
so
do.
it's
I'd like to
question?
ask a question of Miss O'Neill, who provided the document that shows
This
the
is a
correlation.
question for Ms. Charlesworth now.
I understand that, but Miss O'Neill's document was passed to staff as opposed to being passed around as was intended, so therefore we weren't able to read it and ask questions.
I'll just ask if there's any further questions. If not, Ms. Charlesworth, take a seat, and then we'll ask Ms. O'Neill to come back.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you very much. And Ms. O'Neill, if you could just come back up to the podium, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Ms. O'Neill, we just wondered if you could explain the correlation between noise and waking in the document that
Yeah,
Councillor Miles has
I'm
got.
not by any means a computer guru. It was done on a smartwatch, which then I tried to transfer the data into a CSV and put it on an Excel, which I don't have the dot. I don't have a sheet now. So what I did was I took screenshots of the month of September, just as an example, on a Monday, a Tuesday, and a Wednesday and a Thursday. So that's what you see is my sleep data. The red dots indicate I then went into my phone, and again, I will admit that this isn't a very, functional way to do it, I guess. And then I just went through and thought, okay, I'll get all the data where the decibel reading was above 75 degrees during my sleep time. The rest of the day, it's much higher. And I then put a red dot to correspond over the sleep data that shows, okay, it woke me up at that time, or it reduced me out of a deep sleep for that time. So the decibel levels are down the side, and I've put a red dot with the reading over where it occurred, the time it occurred, and what it did to if it affected my sleep pattern.
Thank you.
See, so where there's a red mark, that indicates there was noise, and where there's a blue mark, that gives an indication of the kind of sleep you're having.
Yes,
or
so
not
the
having.
bottom layer, the red layer is the overlay. The bottom layer was the screenshot. Well, it wasn't an overlay. I just went in manually and said, well, the noise data is showing at that time, and it's very specific down to the hour as to what noise was occurring. Some of them 90 decibels at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. If councillors have got any further question, do you have any details that you can leave with councillors so they can contact
If
you?
someone wants to
there?
get my noise data, I'm more than happy to give it to you.
Or if you've got any further
Maybe someone
questions,
here
councillors
is
can
more
contact you regarding that.
computer literate than I.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Henderson. You'll get to them in just a moment. So thank you very much to those people in the gallery that came in tonight for item 14.2.3. And we'll move on to item 14.3.3, which is the Roe Estate Structure Plan, Lot 24, number 463, Beechborough Road North, and Lot 385, number 18, Black Boy Way, Beechborough Swan SP 2024/3 on page 268. And we have one in-person deputation from Alex Jarvis, who is the CLE Town Planning and Design in support of officers' recommendation. Good evening, Alex. Here we go.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. So, as you've just heard, I'm Alex Jarvis, Town Planner from CLE Town Planning, and this is Sam Butler from Tomahawk Property. So, as noted, this deputation relates to the Roe Estate Structure Plan and is made on behalf of our client and project manager Tomahawk, who represent the landowner, the Anglican Schools Commission. We're pleased to be here tonight to speak in support of this project and would like to begin by noting our support for the officer recommendation. By way of background, the proposed structure plan applies to the former John Septimus Road Beechborough campus. The campus was closed at the end of the 2022 school year following a decision to consolidate all services at the John Septimus Road campus in Mirrabooka. In response, in September 2022, an amendment to the city's local planning scheme was progressed. The amendment rezoned the site from private clubs and institutions to residential development to allow a structure plan to be prepared over the site to coordinate development for residential purposes. The amendment was approved at the end of 2023, with the structure plan now representing the next step in the planning process to facilitate redevelopment of the site. The structure plan itself will make provision for the delivery of medium-density residential development, supported by a local road network that will integrate with the established residential character of the area. The layout also responds to feedback received from council during the scheme amendment process, with an area of public open space proposed in the northwestern corner of the site to facilitate retention of an existing stand of marri trees. We believe this proposal represents the most logical use of the site and will introduce additional housing within a residential infill area, as identified within the city's local planning strategy. As has been demonstrated through the structure plan, the proposal is consistent with the state and local planning framework, and we would therefore appreciate council's support for the project, which will facilitate subdivisional works and delivery of additional housing in the short term. Madam Mayor, council, thank you, and
Thank you
certainly
very
happy to
much.
answer any questions.
Thanks very much for that deputation, Mr Jarvis. And I'll ask councillors, are there any questions? You can't get off that easily tonight. There must be something out there for councillors to ask. No questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your deputation tonight, and we'll consider that the council next week.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and that's the end of the deputations. Councillors move to 6.3, which is councillor questions in regard to items on the agenda tonight. I've got lots. Here we go. So we have Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, my questions are about the 14.2.3 Movida Estate acoustic wall. And I've got questions about the diagram showing the noise level increase. So I'm looking at page 160, figure 5.2. I guess my question is through you probably to Mr Van der Linde. I'm also referring to figure 5.4. So both of these diagrams show an increase in noise. And I think just first question is that between the original acoustic model and the noise readings that were taken recently? Is that right, Mr Van der Linde? That's page 160, figure 5.2, and figure 5.4 on page 162.
Madam Mayor, yes, on page 160, figure 5.2 represents the noise level increase between with the wall as constructed on the west side and no wall. and that is in regards to the Kilder algorithms, the modified settings. So this forms part of the second report that was done. So this is now taking into consideration the measurements that were taken on the sites identified on page 149 to test the modelling that was done in the first report.
And how does that compare with figure 5.4, which appears to be the same measurement between the original model and the current actual acoustic readings, but using a different algorithm? Could you explain that?
Figure 5.4 on page 162 represents the results of the Nord 2000 algorithm, whereas the one on 5.2 on page 160 represents the Kilder algorithm. It's a different model's results.
Yeah, so I guess the question I've got is there seems to be an enormous difference between the two. So if I look at page 160, it's showing that the increase is probably no more than greater than 1 decibel, which would not be noticeable. But then using the same models and, well, a different model, but the same measurements, we're saying that it's greater than 5 decibels. So why is there such a difference? And which one should we be using?
Madam, I'll refer that very technical question to Mr. Russell,
Thank you.
and that's got more understanding of that.
Thank you, Mayor Richardson, and through you. So the difference really between the two models here, and these are the models with modified settings. So what the consultant has attempted to do is to make the default algorithms more accurate based on the sound level readings that they took. What they actually found is that was unsuccessful. So the consultant has found that the Kilder algorithm using default settings was in fact the most accurate of the, I guess, 4 algorithms, noting that was both Kilder and Nord default and modified. The Kilder with default settings was found to be the most accurate.
Okay, thanks. So if we should be looking at the Kilder algorithms on page 160, figure 5.2, what that's showing is that the difference between the original acoustic model in SwanView and the actual measurements in SwanView says that the noise level increase is no more than 1 decibel. Is that right? Because it's all green, isn't it? So that light green means 1 decibel.
Madam Mayor, through you, I think you also need to look at page 159, which is figure 5.1. So figure 5.1 reflects the results of the Kilder algorithm, and that is more comparable to 161, which is the output of the Nord algorithm, whereas on figure 5.2, it only shows the difference, whereas the others is actually the output.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're after. So what we're saying is that the increase in 5.2, which is the more accurate model, is so small as to not be noticeable. But that's completely different to what the community are telling us. We've heard from 3 people, and they're all saying that it's shaking them out of bed. So how can this model in figure 5.2, page 160, be correct?
Mr. Russell may be able to give more detail on that. My understanding is that in the first report that was done, the modelling was done, and that gave certain results, which indicated that there wasn't, or the results were very varied between the areas. And then the consultants in the second report that measured the sound for a week, over a period of a week at 5 locations to test the model, and then use that to actually refine the model to make it more accurate. So it's not to say that the model was so incorrect. They actually tested it afterwards and then determined the accuracy of it. So it was tested through the measurements reflected on page 149. And if I can refer you to page 149, the 5 points of where the noise were measured. the fifth point, so the most southern point on 42 Blackadder Road is a measurement where there's not a wall constructed yet. But if you look at the results, the noise at that point was actually higher than in the other areas where the wall's constructed. Now, that just shows how varied the results are. And it shows that it's not only the wall that is impacting the difference in the noise, it's topography, it's the type of train and the rest of it. So even with on the average, with the same trains over that week, the property where there's no wall had more noise than where there were walls. Now, if you look at the topography at that point, that's where the area is very flat, and where the wall is, the train line actually dives into the, it's lower at that point. So you could conclude from that the topography actually plays a bigger role than the wall. Yeah, but that's just from a layman's term, because it's so varied you can't, and that's the point, it's inconclusive.
You have a further question, Deputy Mayor?
No, I
share
do.
it around.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, in location 5 on page 149, it's flat in that location, so the houses are on the same level as the train line. But in, say, location 4 and location 2, the train line is lower down, and therefore the sound is being reflected up by the wall, whereas previously it was being blocked by being in a cutting. Would you say that was right? I must admit, Mr. Van der Linde, you might not be as familiar with the site as I am.
Yeah, I can just say that from all the measurements and having had a discussion with the acoustic consultants, they say that with train noise it's very difficult, because there's so many variables that will be very difficult to actually determine what percentage or what part of the noise is as a result of the reflected noise. So from these results, if you could do away with the reflective noise, it won't take the train noise away. The train will still wake people up and it will still make a noise. It's trying to determine how much of the current noise is as a result of the reflection of the wall, and that's the difficulty to determine. And what we're proposing in the report is an alternate way to just try to determine what part of the noise, what percentage of the noise, of any noise in that area will be reflected from the wall.
Yeah, I understand that, and that sounds reasonable. I guess the question is, could we, as well as doing that study, could we also do the study that the community are asking for, which is a before and after study, and that could be done, for instance, at location 5, 42 Blackadder Road. Could we do that as well? Then we'd actually have what the community are wanting, which is a before and after actual measurement noise study.
Madam Mayor, I'll respond on from one aspect, and then I'll ask Mr. Russell to give more details from a noise perspective. We can certainly do a before and after measurement at that point. The issue we're going to have is you don't know when the wall's going to be built. It may be in 20 years' time or 50 years' time. It's when that site opposite on that point it will be developed. That's still owned, that's in private ownership. So there's that practicality. We won't be able to do it in the next month because there's not a wall. So you'll be able to do it once the wall is built. You'll do the rest of the study. But notwithstanding that, I think what the results of the modelling and the measurements to date saying is, even if we do that, we will probably still get an inconclusive result, or so variable results that it won't be of much help. And I think if Mr. Russell wants to say something more about that part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, so the recommendation in the report and the study that we're proposing is aiming to take some of the variability away from the noise source, which is the trains themselves. And part of that, and looking at doing a before and after study where we're going to be able to really compare the data, compare apples to apples, so to speak. We have no idea what the composition of these trains are going to be in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. So if we were to take measurements where there's no wall to the south of where it currently exists tomorrow, and then hold on to that data for say 5 years or 10 years, simply taking a measurement at that point in time of the trains and then trying to compare it to data that is 10, 5 years old, whatever it is, and drawing any kind of link between those two measurements is going to be difficult. Whereas if we can use a replicable noise source, using that as opposed to relying on a train, then we have data that we may, fingers crossed, we're hoping, we can rely on looking towards the future.
Okay, understood. And I do think that the approach you suggested is valid. As we do have before reading at location 5, and I've been told by members of the community, and I've seen it myself, that an access road for the construction of the remainder of the road is already in place and construction is about to begin. If that wall were to be built in the next month or so, or in the next 6 months, we could do that study, then we'd have similar trains. Is that reasonable? And would it add greatly to the cost?
Thank you, Mayor Richardson, and through you. Just to confirm the question is if we were to take measurements, further measurements, say tomorrow, and then if that wall, that southern portion of wall was to be constructed, say by the end of the year, could we compare that data? If that was the question, then yes. I would imagine that it's probably a bit unlikely that that full southern section would be constructed in time. If we could take additional measurements and it was constructed, even looking back at the measurements that we have, which are almost 18 months old at this point, I think if we were to take measurements tomorrow from the 5 locations, trying to draw conclusions back that far would be difficult, in my opinion.
Well, the answer to the question, can we do it before and after study if the wall's about to be built, the answer is yes. All right, thank you.
That's already been built. Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is for staff, obviously, and my question is relating to what was brought up at the deputation by Angela Charlesworth. Did our City of Swan CEO meet with the Shire President 2 or 3 weeks ago for discussions about the noise wall?
Ask you, Mr. Acting CEO.
I believe Mr. van der Linden has the answer to that.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, my understanding is that the CEO was contacted by the CEO of Mandela, and then I've actually provided the CEO with all the information that we've got to date. So that is with the City of Mandela at the moment.
The question was, did they actually meet?
They did discuss it. Whether they've actually met to discuss it or whether they discussed it over the phone, I won't be able to answer.
Okay,
But
so
as a result of that discussion, I was asked to provide information and made contact with the CEO of Mandering to provide him with all the information, which I did.
Thank you. Given that, why wasn't that included in the officer's report?
Madam Mayor, because that happened after the report was written. That was last week or so.
Okay. Is there a further question?
Yes,
Councillor?
there is a further question. Thank you. I've got 2 further questions. Okay, regarding the investigation of the textured acoustic cladding on page 99, staff say that staff say it's the last paragraph. Staff say that the cladding installed adjacent to Reed Highway, etc., seems decorative and unlikely to provide deliberate acoustic attenuation. And then on page 100, staff go on to say that they investigated the product Stratacell Whisper and they identified its costs. So I'm just wondering, have staff actually got any acoustic data or comparative data on the acoustic attenuation that is provided by a textured acoustic cladding wall, other than other than saying that it seemed decorative and unlikely, and then coming up with a cost. I don't see anything in there sort of stating the benefit or not in an acoustic data sense.
Through you, Mr van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, the relevance of of mentioning the cladding installed on Reed Highway stems from the fact that that was mentioned in a council motion. The council motion was for us to investigate the acoustic cladding that occurs in that vicinity of Rowan Reed Highway between West Swan Road and Davies. In investigating that wall is not an acoustic. It's not cladded with acoustic materials. It's just a decorative wall that was built as it's a noise wall which is decorative, but it's not cladded. So that's the relevance of that. And then we went and in the absence of such a wall in that instance, staff looked at cladding that is available in the market, and that is when they started to look at the cladding that's the Stratco Cell Whisper product, and that is what then was looked at further.
So we've got costs, but no other data to talk about how Strata Cell Whisper might actually work in situ. And a third question is, would Blackadder Road in Swanview likely be a suburb or an area that would receive a mass street tree planting regardless of whether it was considered as a solution to addressing this problem? Are we just, swapping apples for oranges in this manner?
Through you, Mr van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, I'm not 100% aware of the tree planting program, but there's already trees being planted on Blackadder Road, and to what extent that program proposes further trees along that road, I'm not too sure.
Would you like to add some further, Mr Cogan?
Yeah, when we're doing the mass street tree planting, we do look generally for wide verges that are easily accessible for planting and watering. And as Mr van der Linde has pointed out, there are already some that have been planted in recent times along Blackadder Road. So I wouldn't say that we wouldn't plant more there, but there are other areas where it would be easier to get, I guess, benefit from the planting in terms of the number of trees planted for the cost.
Okay. Councillor Henderson, you had a question.
Yes, in regard to the operator, it's Brookfield, I think, operates the line. Is that right, Mr. Acting CEO? Is it Brookfield that operate the line?
ARC Infrastructure.
ARC it is? Oh, it's ARC these days. Yeah, I wasn't sure. So have we written to ARC, or have we written to the Minister for Transport, or the the member for Midland, seeking information about the number of trains, the length of trains, how many locomotives? In other words, we're seeing a lot more noise activity, so perhaps we're getting a lot longer trains with more locomotives. And of course that will increase the noise levels. So have we written to them and asked them about some information on that? Because it would seem to me as though that's part of the problem.
Through you, Mr CEO.
I might refer to Mr van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, yes, we have written to ARC. We've also had discussions with them around this whole matter. The first thing we've asked them is whether they've got any noise measurements historically around this area, which we've had a response back that they don't. And we then also questioned any changes in the way that the train line is being used and the trains itself. They've indicated that they do have data about the number of trains and the length of trains, the heights of trains and so on. So that information will be made available to us. But it was interesting that when the information we got from them at this point in time is that in the last year the actual numbers of trains have reduced. where there was an increase and now it's been reduced. But we'll get that the actual data from them, and we can then share it with council.
Thank you.
Becomes available.
So more questions, if I may.
Yep.
So the number of trains might have decreased, but the length and number of locomotives might have increased. So it'd be useful to know that data. Mr. Van Lien, can we get that data as well, please?
We'll make the data available, what we get from them, yeah.
Thank you.
So one other thing, in regard to noise attenuation, have we investigated what might be effective in terms of noise attenuation? Because I'm hearing a lot of things that don't add up. Like, for instance, you could put tiles on a wall, but at the frequencies that we're talking about here, the tiles will have no effect. Planting trees will have no effect. But if we looked at things like, that have to be very tall earth bunds, because that will have an effect. Have we looked at those?
Through Mr. Van der Lien.
No, we haven't. We've addressed the council motion, which was to look at there were 4 things that council actually identified in a council resolution to look at. One was the noise attenuation with cladding. The other was the filling of sand between the wall and the rail, which we have addressed in the previous reports. But we haven't looked at a berm on the eastern side, for instance, of the railway line. But in that regard, there wouldn't be space to do that in any case.
Okay. Now, further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is about assuming that the Stratocell acoustic cladding would be an appropriate treatment. Could we add this to the non-financial advocacy priorities at item 14.2.5? As there's an election coming up, or 2 elections coming up, they might want to consider contributing to the cost.
I'll ask through you, Mr. Acting CEO.
Yes, I'll refer that to Dr. McQuaid.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, if the Deputy Mayor would like to move a alternate motion to that effect, that would be the mechanism by which it would be added. Of course, we can do it outside of as part of our normal advocacy discussions as well.
Okay, thanks. That looks like a good way forward, at least for part of the problem.
Councillor Howlett, did you have a question?
No, I've finished my question.
Okay. Councillors, is there anyone who hasn't asked a question that would like to ask a question of staff? No? I'll ask councillors, are there any further questions for staff?
I've got further questions about other items.
Okay, we'll move on to those items.
My questions are about the
Are these items on the agenda?
Yeah, they're items on the agenda. I've got items about one of the confidential items, and I've got some simpler questions that can be asked in public.
I have a question that's not confidential, if that's better.
Okay, we'll do...
I'll just finish mine now. Looking at the accounts payable, I noticed that on page 398, there's $1,925 for a sausage sizzle. I just wonder how you could spend $1,900 on a sausage sizzle through you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps,
through you, Mr. Travascus.
So it's page 398, towards the bottom, 069414, $1,925 sausage sizzle for Ellenbrook BMX event.
Oh, yes.
Seems quite a lot of sausages to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. As per the description, that's the Ellenbrook BMX event was a public event. So, I mean, on notice, I can provide a more detailed breakdown of that invoice if required.
Okay, thanks. So it's more than just sausages. And then just below that, I was quite surprised to see this one. Right at the bottom there, Enlightenment Coach, $400, Loving Kindness Meditation. What was that about?
Through you, Mr. Travascus.
Through the chair, yeah, I'll take that on notice and provide more information.
Thank you. I'm not sure, was that a workshop? Well, it was possibly a workshop. Okay, so but we'll get that definite answer. It just sounds like that, but we'll check for you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. On page 29, down the bottom, it refers to complaint management principles, and it says any person who believes a council member. So could that be someone that might be in the suburban areas or centre of Melbourne, or in other words, so did we put some boundaries around this?
Questions for you, Mr. CEO?
I think it would be any
Would it
person.
come
I might
through you,
refer
Ms.
that to
Hodgins?
Mrs.
Thank you. 3.3.1, yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, I think it means what it says, any person. So it is any person.
Well, I'm not happy with that. I might be looking for an amendment to the Swan resident or ratepayer.
Okay, if you'd like to have a discussion with staff about that during the week, that might help. Councillor Howlett, you had a question.
I do, thank you. 14.2.2. I've got a question on page 80, just above, the paragraph above the title consultation. It says to bring forward advertising of the policy, blah, 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 that the city requests the council remove the wording from the July OCM council resolution. My question is, how can we remove the wording from a previous council resolution?
It was 14.2.2. So, give me a second, flip back. Okay, so 14.2.2. Oh, thank you, Mr. van der Leen.
Madam Mayor, through you. So the purpose of this report, well, in July, Council resolved to approve the advertising of this policy, subject to us getting the data from Landgate. So what that paragraph implies is that that what we're asking is to remove that wording from the previous resolution. But then in the recommendation, this recommendation then replaces the previous recommendation. So that's the way it's removed. It's probably not the correct wording from a legal perspective in the context of the report, but it's asking council to do away with the requirement to wait for the data from Landgate is what that means.
So would we not then have to revoke that decision of council, because it's a decision of council? We can't just remove wording because it doesn't suit the needs of advertising a policy. Surely that's not an acceptable request.
Through you, Mr. van der Leen.
Madam Mayor, my understanding is that the recommendation is put in this report, replaces the previous recommendation by council through this council report.
Councillor Henderson.
In the same vein, well, actually...
I haven't finished my questions. Have we moved on from me now?
Well, I
Mayor?
looked down and I hadn't said if we can go back, but I'm on to Councillor Henderson. We'll come back. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. In regard to the actual report, there are a number of errors in it. For instance, on page 83, it refers to the trunk diameter and measured from 1.3 metres from the ground. I had a discussion with Mr. van der Leen about this today. 1 metre from the ground. Whereas if you look at the accepted standard, that's supposed to be at chest level, which is 1.3 metres. So there's a disconnect between the regulations and what the industry uses. The other thing is that just want to get from Mr. Van der Linde. Are we seeing the information from Landgate anytime soon, or is it still as written in the report?
Through you, Mr. Van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, I've inquired today. It's still uncertain when we're going to get the information from Landgate, so it's still as in the report. And then just in regards to the first question, I suppose, in regards to the height of measurement, Councillor Henderson refers to the regulations. So the Australian standards, in the Australian standards, they talk about a measurement actually 1.4 meters above ground for the trunk, to determine the trunk width, but in the context of determining a tree protection zone, whereas in this policy the measurement a meter above ground level is aligned with the criteria used in the current Western Australian R codes. So the reason why we've used the 1 meter was because it aligns with the R codes. But in the standards, it uses 1.4, but what I can see there, it's in a different context. It's to determine a different purpose.
So, Madam Mayor, that and plus the fact there's also an error in the report on the tree trunk diameter.
Where was that?
On the next couple of pages.
Can you give the page number?
It's page number 95. It refers to a trunk diameter of 1.6 metres rather
Just
than...
give everyone a chance to grab page 95, and then
So that's wrong.
whereabouts again? So,
Page 95.
Yep.
It refers to a trunk diameter of 1.6 metres as opposed to the other part where it says 160 millimetres. Because we're not seeing the information from Landgate for people to be able to respond to, I'll be moving to defer this such that that information is available for people during the consultation period.
did you have a further question? Or do you like response? No, just finishing, making sure you've finished? Okay. Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson addressed what was going to be my other second question, so I'm happy to hear that. However, I'm still confused with that wording, to remove the wording, because would not, the recommendation doesn't state to do that, and also I don't know how we can do that. So can I please get some clarification as to about the removing the wording from a previous resolution, which was a unanimous resolution?
Through you, Mr. Coaten.
The previous resolution was to advertise when the data had been received. But this has been, we're reporting to council that there's some delays with that, and now recommending that the advertising go ahead without that information.
Further question, Councillor Howlett?
I have just a question, which is more of an observation. On page 202, we've missed the word C for the word characterised. We've got
Just get to page
characterised.
202, was it?
Yep, first sentence, these and other locations are characterised, and I'm assuming that should be characterised. It's just a little typo.
Which paragraph was it?
The first sentence.
First sentence. These
Yep.
and other locations are, characterised. Great, thank you. Okay. Any further questions there?
I've got a question on the same subject. So if we are changing a decision of council, a non-executed decision of council, surely we need a revocation motion for that.
Through you, Mr. Acting CEO. Or through you, Ms. Hodgins.
Through you, presiding member, that's correct. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused though. If I understand from what Mr. Coaten said, we're not actually changing that decision?
We are. It's part.
Through you.
Well, the decision was to advertise after we'd received some information. But we haven't received that information. There's delays in receiving that, so we're recommending that we advertise now without receiving that information. So it's not a significant change to what we're proposing.
But still a change to an unexecuted decision.
Because
So
there is
it's-
another option, and that is to not to advertise it, to wait until we get the mapping.
Yep.
Well, we can take, thank you, presiding member, we can take it on notice, but,
Thank you.
I mean, it is within council's remit to change its course on a previous decision if it decides that as a general rule, if it's not such a material fact, that it can make an amendment.
Well, that's not how this works. If you've got an unexecuted decision, you need a revocation motion. It's easy to change. It just needs 5 hands to go up instead of 2. That's how it works.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take that on notice.
Take it on
and
notice
then
and give you some
we'll-
advice on it.
Yep, get that advice back to you as soon as we can. Councillors, is there any further questions for staff? Councillor Henderson.
Okay, page 69, priority 1. It refers to advocate for protection of the natural environment of the Swan Valley, including native habitat and vegetation and groundwater access and quality. I have a bit of a problem with that because the agricultural sector would, I think, require that be after the word habitat and agricultural sustainable vegetation, because you're going to have conflicts between some kinds of vegetation and agriculture. I think that does staff have a view on how that could play out? Otherwise, I'd like to move an amendment come the meeting.
Okay. Through you, Dr McQuaid.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. Sorry, just for my clarity, we're referring to the Swan Valley item. We can certainly look at the wording in the ask. It wouldn't require you to move an alternate motion because the recommendation in the council report is to endorse the priority advocacy items. We can certainly refine the wording on the ask and circulate that back through in light of it, but I would need to have a further conversation probably with Mr van der Linde on the wording.
Yeah, I have a preference to a change, so I'll discuss that
Yep,
with
happy
Councillor
to-
Zanino and staff.
Okay. And then happy to speak to Dr McQuaid during the week. Yep. Thank you. Okay, councillors, any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, question on the same subject. On page 39, at the top it says details, and then on about the third line down it says under stage 1, a creative cafe is held with all relevant internal business units at the city. May I ask through you, Madam Mayor, what is a creative cafe?
Through you, Dr McQuaid. Sorry, my apologies. Through you, Mr van der Linde.
Madam Mayor, I think that is a term that is used by staff where they get all business units in a room together and they creatively look at all the issues raised in the area and determine what issues are known between the staff and in the preparation of the background report initially. So it's just a term used. You could call it a workshop.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Howlett.
Thanks. I just would like to know who we are advocating to when it comes to that Swan Valley Local Area Plan, because I note that it comes up in the priorities. Number 2, advocates for sustainable development that supports tourism and protects agriculture. Who are we advocating to?
Through you, Dr McQuaid. No, through
Yes,
Mr
sorry,
van der Linde. My head's going wrong.
Madam Mayor, the Swan Valley area falls under the Swan Valley Planning Act in the first instance, and it has also been removed from the city's the local planning scheme. So it's got its own town planning scheme, which is administered by the WIPC. So in most of these instances where it refers to advocate for something, it will be with the Department of Planning, the WIPC, or then other agencies, it may be Department of Water, but it's mainly written in this way because we don't control that area through our scheme and the Act. So it's the WAPC and Department of Planning officers.
Thank you. Further question? Councillors, is there anyone who hasn't asked a question that'd like to ask a question of staff? Are there any final questions for staff?
About confidential items, yes.
Thank you. Do we need to go behind closed doors? We do. Okay. For those in the gallery and those watching at home online, we have some councillors wanting to ask some confidential questions about certain items. So we're going to have to go behind closed doors. So I'll ask for a motion to go behind closed doors. All good. Thank you to those watching live streaming, and also thank you very much to the council members and to staff. We had now come out from behind doors to discuss some confidential agenda items, and we'd like to close the meeting at 7:33. Thank you.